I'm Khalid Alibi here, Dr. Alibi from Stuart Chiropractic, and we're in conversations with Firaz from Opex in Abbotsford. He's a good friend of mine, and we are just turning this into a very casual conversation. Firaz, glad that we could have this.
Yeah, I think the last time we spoke, it was a little bit more formal, like a interview type podcast, at least that was recorded. And we've obviously had tons of conversation between now and then. So I just wanted to, thank you for having this. I think it's going to be a lot more casual and comfortable for both of us, and it'll be more of a back and forth. So I'm looking forward to the chat, man.
Absolutely. I was thinking back to how we met in the first place.
Oh
Do you
yeah.
remember?
Yeah, I do. I do. So you met my wife Yafa first, or had connected with her first, and had come in for some training, essentially. And that was the first time I actually met you.
Yeah, totally. Like our our wives met first. Your wife's a chiropractor, Yafa, Dr. El, and this was like I think when our kids were like we've got kids that are the same age, 8 years old, and in grade three right now. But this was probably maybe 4 years ago when they were just thinking about starting, I think, kindergarten at the time. Um, and so our wives met then. And then I was training and I was still struggling with my lower back pain and I wanted to get into some more lifting. And then obviously that's when, you and I met and you trained me for the first time. That's when we met. And then since
That's
then,
right.
we've been at each other's like kids' birthday parties and hanging out and playing soccer on the field with our kids and football. And so, I'm grateful that this turned out into a friendship. Um, but one of the things that, you know, when we had our birthday party for our son, Ishan, when you guys came that first time, I remember like we had some photos and stuff, and a couple of people that I know, like, who's that guy in the photo that's so jacked? Who is that guy? And it was Fraz, like it's you that's there. And like, so you
Well, that was
own
4 years ago.
Pilar. So you own a gym and you love to work out. This is part of your lifestyle, part of your routine. Like, I think people want to know, obviously this is kind of like a loaded question, but how did you get to look the way that you do right now? And obviously it's not just about the looks, but I think that's important as well. It's an important piece because that also leads to performance and how we feel about our body. So this is kind of an odd question, but what's your secret?
Secret is there's no secret, but it's a fair question. I think the majority of the people that get into working out at some point or another are looking to look better. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what it was like for me when I first started working out way back when. But if you were to think about what the secret is, I think it's honestly consistency for one, and then just solid principles. Nothing more than that. And of course, there's a genetic component for some things as well. So I think there's some people that are more apt at building more muscle, some people that are going to be generally leaner than others. But that doesn't mean that you need some special genetics to look fit, right? So if I were to say what the secret is, it's consistent weight training for a long period of time, and it's being disciplined with your diet. You don't have to go over the top or anything like that, but you can't be over consuming foods, not eating enough protein, not lifting weights, and expect to build muscle and look lean. So I think that's a big part of it. And then the other part that I don't think people think about as much is the lifestyle part of it. So that would be
Mm-hmm.
like your sleep, your water intake. Are you drinking a lot of alcohol? What's your stress like? Because you got to keep in mind, like, our bodies are not designed to build muscle unless it's for a specific reason, right? Like to build muscle is not, you don't need muscle to survive. You don't need a ton of muscle to survive. So in order to build muscle, you're gonna have to put some sort of stress on the body and be able to recover from that stress. So
Mm-hmm.
again, in a
I think
nutshell, it's weight training consistently with good nutritional principles.
I think it's that piece is that like in order to get there, to get stronger, to get more fit, to get the looks that you want, it's like you said, it's the weight training. I feel like we're almost not doing enough exposure, enough repetitions, and not and they don't even know how to do it. I think, well, maybe some people do know how, but the consistency piece is there. And then I just see so many people, like in our practice, we're seeing a lot of baby boomers, and
Mm.
now they're getting into their late 60s, 70s, and now this idea that your muscle is like your organ of longevity. It's just the, um, it's they're in pain, they have different chronic health issues. I like for me, it's easier to motivate my dad to get working out and strength training, but it's harder to get my mom, who's, a female in her late 60s, higher risk of osteoporosis. Um, and obviously our muscle mass just starts declining. So like for me, I'm concerned about the baby boomers and just the lack of, like, they're going for walks, but I think it's good, but it's just not quite good enough to make us resilient for those last couple decades of life where, like one fall and then that's it, you got a fracture and then you're trying to heal and get through that. Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I was gonna say, like in your practice, if you could wave a magic wand and have someone,
Mm,
you know, like your client base or your patient base to adopt one thing that will help them the
yeah,
most, would weight training be one of those top things?
number one.
Number
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Because I mean, that's it. I mean, you can have a crappy diet, but you can still get strong. It may not look the way that you want to look, but you can still get strong again and more resilient.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think once you understand the benefits of weight training, um, and it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. I mean, I think you've read the
Hmm.
book Outlive by Peter Attia, or you've heard about it for sure.
Yep.
That's becoming a little bit more mainstream. Like we got Oprah talking about this book, and
Hmm.
this is a book for the masses, right? So I think a piece of the weight training is the education part, and it's just harder to get into. So the barrier to entry for weight training is much higher than just doing aerobic training or going for a walk. It's just more difficult.
Hmm.
So if you don't grow up with it and you haven't been exposed to it at a young age, it becomes more and more difficult to get into. When
Hmm.
did you start weight training?
When did I start weight training? When I
Yeah,
was in my adolescence. Because I
yeah,
was interested, I was keen on looking a certain way, you know?
exactly. So that's the same for me. It's like I started when I was 14 years old, 13, 14 years old, going into grade 9, right? And I haven't stopped. So for me, I was like, I enjoyed it. I loved it. Saw the benefits right away. As you get older and further away from that adolescent age,
Hmm.
comes harder and harder.
Yeah.
But not to
It's
say you
like,
can't do it. Of course you can do it. It's just more difficult. So it's like, do we still continue to educate people on how important it is, or do people know how important it is, but they just still don't think it's important enough for them to take action?
I think it's like, thinking what are the ways that people can reduce that barrier? Like I think about that YouTube sensation guy, knees over toes, and he's got his, mom doing backward walking on the treadmill, and I was thinking about like how do you like getting a weighted vest and just doing some of that zone 2 training where your heart rate's still up a little bit and you're still adding in a strength piece as well. Um, but yeah, I think it's really seeing is more believing. So when you get more people together doing it together, I think there's a huge thing. Like I can't just stick a weight vest on my mom and ask her to
No.
go out for a dog walk. Like she's got a dog that she walks and she's great about it, and that's been really good for her. Um, but it's finding fun and creative ways to get it done. And I think one obviously is for us, we just want to be an example to our family, but I just really, the level of concern is just high for that, 60 to 70-year-old population.
Yeah, I think like most things, you just gotta find some internal motivation as well too. Like it's gotta hit you at some point.
Hmm.
People around you, community helps, influencers around you help in terms of like your own family and people you look up to perhaps. But at the end of the day, there just has to be that reason internally to like, okay, I gotta do this. I have no choice. Because
Hmm.
one of the things you always ask yourself is what's the alternative, right? Okay, what's the alternative if I don't weight train when I'm 50, 60 years old? Well, eventually you're probably going to have some sort of fall or you're not going to be strong enough to do the things that you like, and your quality of life is going to deteriorate. That's just like inevitable. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So is it worth
Is
me putting the effort in
yeah.
now?
Is the pain of doing it now, is it greater than what could be the pain of the consequence later in life? And
That's
a
right.
lot of it comes down to fear, right? We're scared of the unknown, or we're scared of staying the same. But the unknown is like it paralyzes us, right? So it's just this idea like, well, what's my body gonna be like from when I'm 70? Like people who come in pain in our office all the time, we're in their 20s, 30s, and they're concerned about what their future may look like. But then they've dealt with this pain for so long already. But it's sometimes that fear that just paralyzes us from even just taking action in the first place. Um, but speaking of that, I was just, we see some kids in our practice, and now that my kids are, they're still young, but the eldest is 8 years old. Like I'll have a kid who come into my office who's maybe 12, and he's got back pain. And I'm like, how could somebody who's 12 have back pain? And if it's not anything that's an emergency, then what is creating this pain? And I asked them to do a squat, like do a squat for me, and they just fall right over.
Wow.
Like they've forgotten how to squat, and like just, and it's not their fault because now they go into the school system where they're sitting all day, and then um, they come home, maybe they eat something when they're sitting in a chair, and then if they have recreational activities, great. If they don't, then it's usually some sort of screen time, or like gaming is just out of this world right now. So they'll game for 3 hours or 2 hours and then go to bed, not enough sleep or hydration, wake up again and do the same thing Monday to Friday. Um, and I think it's tough on parents, obviously, who have, full-time jobs, and, like, how do you, like, it's different nowadays. But I'm seeing this at an earlier age where, we were at my son's hockey practice um, early in the morning. I think it was like a Thursday, and we come out they're finished at 8 in the morning, and there's the next team that's coming onto the ice, and it's a bunch of 14-year-olds, and they're all gathered around sitting at the table in a big circle. There's probably like 15 of them, and they all had their head down like this, and every single one of them was on their phone. Every single one. There was no talking. It was completely silent. And sure, it's early in the morning and stuff, but um, like it's the environment that shapes who we are. And I think this is why we're seeing not only early diabetes, but we're seeing early arthritis in kids. So not just in their back, but in their neck. It's just like, how do we design environments for them to thrive? Because the stuff isn't going away. Like I have a stand-up desk at home, but why don't we do that for kids? So
It's a good point, Helen. It's a very good point. It's the priorities of the society, right? What are the
mhm,
priorities of the society and the people around you and your grown-ups? You mentioned, the child that came in that was 12 years old. I would be surprised if his or her parents were very active people and that was a big like priority for them in their family. Like for you, you take your kids out almost I mean every weekend. I mean more than every weekend during the week. Like they're physically active. We get together. What are we doing? We're going out. We're playing. Like this is just how we do things. In the Alibi household. It's just the way it is.
mhm,
So
yeah,
you go up with that compared to the alternative, which is, oh, you can just sit, and play video games after school and there's no physical activity. So it's just like, yeah, you're right. It's the environment, but it's the
comes
parents'
on the parents. Yeah,
lead your family. Like you got to lead
yeah.
your family, I think.
I mean, I went through a phase where I was watching, Netflix back-to-back episodes of something, and like we all have our moment where we just need to escape.
For
But
sure.
I, I yeah, it's this idea that things aren't taught, they're caught. And this is just like we've heard that living as a role model to our kids. But my Rahel, our youngest, he picked up on the phrase "monkey see, monkey do," and so he says that.
It's so true though, right? Like it's
Yeah,
the environment you're creating.
yeah.
Um,
Or maybe I was on my phone and my son said, "Hey, it's not good to look at your phone when you're walking on the street." We were just walking down our hill from our house, and I'm like, You know what? You're right. And I think we only need to tell our kids that more often is, when that's the case, is you're right. And they kind of feel empowered by it. Um, but yeah, I think it comes back into just being able to govern yourself and having the self-awareness. And it comes down to mental health. And not just there's mental health, but just um, emotional health. This idea that like Dr. Shahana, my wife Shahana, who's, big speaker now and talking about how, obviously emotions are neither good nor bad, it's how we interpret them. So this idea of like emotional fitness, this idea that no matter how bad things are and things can get really bad in life, that you can still handle it. And having that sense of grit, I think, is just something that personally I'm working on and hoping to instill in my own kids.
Yeah, and that's part of I know we talked about weight training a little bit, but I mean, this is
Mm,
many challenges that you're
yes,
giving yourself throughout the days
you're right.
and sense of accomplishment.
We're back. We got cut off for a moment, so it's all good. I understand that you had a um, event, body. You're helping people analyze, interpret, and make some recommendations based on their current body composition, what it means, and then how it's related to their goals. So, how did it go, and what are some key points you want to share? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, so we did this body composition seminar, I guess 3 weeks back. We had about 35 people come in. This was like just a free seminar at Opex. So some of our current clients, but the majority of it were just people that want to learn more about their body composition and how they can improve it. We'll be doing another one on December 6th as well. But anyways, the key thing that people wanted to know was their body composition. So basically, for most people, body composition is body fat percentage is an easy way to kind of like think about it, or like how you look naked. Really, that's what it is. So we got everyone to hop on our InBody machine, and it measured their body fat percentage, muscle mass, fat mass, um, basal metabolic rate, and those are the big numbers that we were able to measure with people. The big one for most people is that body fat percentage. So obviously, the leaner you are, the lower your body fat percentage. There's a couple of misconceptions there. So sometimes people will think, well, I'm skinny, so I'm gonna have low body fat percentage. But body fat percentage is determined by the amount of muscle mass you have compared to your weight, and conversely, the amount of fat that you
Mm,
have in your weight. So like if someone's 200 pounds and they have a ton of muscle, then they're going to have a low body fat percentage. But if someone's 150 pounds and they don't have that much muscle, they're not going to have a very good body fat percentage. And then good's obviously a relative
mm.
term, but it's not going to be that lean look like that people are looking for. So after doing
What?
that, then we went into some of like the nuts and bolts. So how do you improve your body fat percentage?
Yeah.
Well, it's basically two things. It's increasing muscle mass and
Mm.
it's decreasing fat mass. That's essentially what it is.
So, what's the fastest way? Is it, can you focus on one versus the other? And like, is increasing your muscle mass just going to naturally bring down your body fat percentage?
So the answer to that is yes, it will. What do
Okay.
you want to prioritize? For a beginner and even up to an intermediate, you can do both at the same time. As you become more advanced, it becomes
Yeah.
harder to do both at the same time.
So weight training plus restricting your calories.
So yeah, so with the beginner, they could be in what's called a caloric deficit and
Yes.
still gain muscle because
Mm-hmm.
their bodies have just never, it's provided they're doing weight training, of course, because their bodies have just never had that stress at all.
Mm-hmm.
So then their bodies have to really adapt to that stress and they create muscle faster um, than someone who's been training for a while at a faster rate. So as a beginner, you can gain more muscle as a ratio as until a certain point. So it's like the law of diminishing returns, right? Once you get better at something, it's harder and harder to get better at it.
Yeah.
So if you were to say what's the most efficient way to decrease your body fat percentage, it's gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time, right? For some people, the losing fat part will be more important. So let's just say someone's way overweight is 350 pounds and is 35-40% body fat. Losing fat is going to be your best way to to
Hmm.
become leaner, it's not going to be to adding more muscle. You don't need to add any more muscle. You probably have a lot of muscle. You just got to lose the fat.
Mm.
But if someone's 100 pounds,
Hmm.
gaining muscle is going to be the most efficient way to, decrease that body fat percentage, and that's more important for their health anyways as well.
Mm.
So
It's
yeah, it's a couple
interesting
of
because I'm gonna go back to that baby boomer example is just because like sometimes we think that oh because someone's in their 60s and 70s, late 60s, they're not concerned about less concerned about the way that they look. And I'm actually not, I don't say surprised, but I think I'm just fascinated by the fact that yeah, there are a lot of people who are still wanting to look at their best. They're coming to us in pain, but they can't, unload the dishwasher. They can't put their socks on. Helping them get through this pain is important. But then the moment that they, try and do those things again, their back flares up again. But part of the root of it is actually I want to get back to looking better. And I just had somebody come in and tell me the same thing today. It wasn't about being able to do the dishes. That's not their goal, right? So it was how they look.
look better.
Um,
They said they want to look better.
yeah. I mean, of course they want to be able to unload the dishwasher, but really it was their focus was I want to lose this weight. And this is a 69-year-old woman. And, you know, so I have to like personally, it's, I can help connect what her goal is with some of the care I'm recommending. But then what would you say to somebody like that at that age group who wants to drop some 20 pounds, or even 30, but obviously there's, a muscle mass issue as well.
Yeah, the good news for her is I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, right? That's one thing to think
Mm,
about is when you clean up some of the things in your lifestyle and diet and you start to exercise, it's going to help with your pain as well. So that's the thing is like the motivation might be different. Potentially she wants to lose the weight and that's her number one goal, even though she's in a little bit of pain. But for her, I would start with lifestyle first, sleep, water
mm,
intake, steps throughout the day, all that sort of stuff. And then obviously the exercise program that she's doing. So she should be doing some sort of weight training, some personalized weight training. And
mm,
I feel very strongly about that, especially as you get older. It has to be somewhat personalized. You can't
mm.
have people doing deadlifts when their hinge patterns are not grooved. And you would agree with me there, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're just throwing their back out every other day. By throwing their back out, it means like it's sparking pain, which is limiting them for the day. It may not be like they can't move at all, but it's affecting them. I mean, that's the thing I think we need to like maybe do a better job of. This something that I think is on my agenda is being able to um, walk somebody through the patterns that they need, whether it's learning how to squat properly again or pick something off the ground, um, to give it in a way, deliver it in a way where they can still learn it at home. The thing is that it's so difficult though, right? Like I was a kinesiologist for a while. Just having that hands-on approach is huge, but the access to care for people is limited, and time. It's just time. So I don't know. Obviously, you have things set up at your gym a certain way, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a little bit different in our gym for sure because it's all we focus on is personalized fitness, right? Like that's all
Hmm.
we do. But for the person that might not necessarily have access to coaching and things of that nature, I would just start super small, super basic with
Hmm.
some things that you can, execute on. So as an example, 3 days a week, maybe you're just doing wall sits and body weight squats and some tall
Mm.
planks just to like start the routine. You get
Okay.
proficient at that, and then maybe you get one other thing or one other exercise, or look up a video on YouTube that you might want to try,
Hmm.
because they might not have the luxury of a professional helping them. But you
Hmm.
You can do your own research as well, right? Like I think that's part of it. It's on you. Like you should be the one that's the most invested in your own health. Sure, we can have, someone like yourself and someone like a coach helping, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to take care of yourself too. There has to be
Hmm.
some accountability there on your own. So what I would recommend is just starting super basic, groove the pattern, do it consistently for a month or two, add something else, um, before going into anything that's too technical. And then when you're ready, maybe you get a couple of personal training sessions. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like just something small. And people can say, well, yeah, it's a time and money. Yeah, for sure. But you got to prioritize. I'm sure you spent money on other things, and I'm sure that you've spent your time in other ways. For sure.
Yeah, this idea of um, prioritizing things, and fortunately, it's
Prioritizing.
um, people have so much on their plate, whether it's young kids or aging parents or life that happens. But somehow we still find a way to go to Disneyland. So
Or eating out or whatever. Like you look
yeah,
at
of
you look at
course.
yeah. One of the things you can figure out a lot about a person is see how they spend their money. See how they spend their money. And well, of course their time, but their money too, because their money will tell you what their priorities are.
And how clean their car is.
Yeah, that's a big one too.
Maybe the
That's a big
inside. But
one.
no, I think you're right. It's just like, what do you do with your environment? How do you spend your money? And I think, I've talked to Shahana about this, is that we all have money dials, meaning like I think we all have something that we might splurge on a little bit more of. And like for me, it might be like fitness equipment, or we see a, cool health foodie kind of restaurant that we want to try out, that we'll spend a little bit more there. Or yeah, when avocados were skyrocket price, I still bought them because I love them that much. Someone might think I'm crazy. What? How could you pay that much for an avocado? Like, so, but we all have that thing. For someone might be like a cashmere sweater or a watch. They just love certain watches or cars. Or, like yourself. So, what would you say your top three money dials are? Top three things that you invest your money in for yourself.
And I'm relatively cheap, to be honest. I'd say my wife's probably more of the spender, but tennis is a big one for me. I'll
Okay.
I'll splurge on yeah, I'll splurge on tennis, or going on like on certain trips for sure.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, Callan, I just when I was younger, I spent money on stupid stuff all the time. But now I think as I get older, I am way more careful with how I'm spending my money because I think it's a big reflection of like what I value. So like if I when I was younger, I would spend money on like designer clothes. I am not interested in that at all anymore. Like just not even remotely interested. So my money dial has changed dramatically as I've gotten older, for sure. Um, but I'm more about the experience now than things, I would say, for the most part, overall.
I mean, absolutely, right? It's the moments that we have, the relationships that we have with people, experiences over things, or the things
100%.
that we remember.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's probably why you decided to take your kids to Disneyland, even though, you know, like personally, I went as a kid, but I'm just my perspective of having everything so mass commercialized, and my perception of it is just a lot of like overconsumption and a lot of,
Oh yeah.
so like supersized everything. And that can be a good thing. Supersized cars, amusement parks, things like that. But it comes with all these other things as well. Um, but I think it's like when you're, I don't know if it's like this Western world, Eastern world thing. It was just, even with our own health, is having a little bit of a contrarian mindset as to like, what are the masses doing? What's everybody doing? And then versus like, what do you need to do that aligns with your goals and your beliefs and your values. And I think sometimes we don't even know what our values are, right? And can ask somebody, what are your values? Like, can you identify them? Um, because then I think you can make better decisions for yourself. So, um, yeah.
You're
What
bang
are your
on there.
thoughts on that?
It's getting harder to, well, it's just getting harder to stick out now, right? I mean, if you look, I think that
Mm,
especially it's more of a copycat world now, especially with social media and the internet. And obviously the internet's done a ton of good, but there's also some negatives behind it. And that's part of it. I think people are starting to copy each other too much and they're starting to compare themselves too much. And they have
mm,
access to all this stuff that they never would have had access to before. So it's harder to be a genuine person that sticks out, has their own values, and kind of goes against the grain, right? I
mm-hmm,
think that's why a lot of people are drawn to people that are more on the genuine side and like not normal, not the norm. Right?
mm.
Like you mentioned some of the well, like what are some values that you have that you would say are like outside of the norm,
Outside the norm.
or even not doesn't have to necessarily be outside the norm, but some things that you've been very, intentionally ingraining within yourself and your family.
I think for us, just to place a lot of value on our health.
Hmm.
And I did it before, like I'd injured my lower back, I herniated the disc in my back, I had to go see a surgeon. Like I've been rehabbing, I still rehab this thing to this day. Um, Even as I'm sitting here, I can feel some of that leg pain come on if I'm sitting for too long.
Yeah.
But like I can run again. I played basketball for the last 6 months for the first time in 10 years. Like how long did it take me to get there? Like a decade. And sometimes I think that's you go through those moments in your life where it's like the worst thing that you think has happened to you, and then turns out later that it's one of the best things. So because of that, I don't want to go back there. I just really work really hard because I know how it felt to feel that way and the consequences of not placing value on it. And unfortunately, I think that happens for a lot of people. We get that wake up call. Um, and that's, but it's the end of the day, it's the experiences that we have that allow us to form our values. Otherwise, you can't just tell somebody like go value that. That's important. No, it's because you experience something. The same thing with our kids, right? You can't just tell them. You got to let them experience what it's like. Um, so, yeah, I think that's one of the things that is important. But I think it's also being not fixated on health, but just um, for me, it's like what gives me juice and energy is when I've worked out 5 days a week, when I've got enough sleep, when I've got some sunlight on me. To me, it's like, what's the perfect recipe for me to perform at my best? When I'm performing at my best, I'm better for my family, I'm better for our patients. Just the other day, I was telling somebody that I deleted YouTube off of my phone, and you think, oh, I'm not wasting as much time. It's not about the time now, which I'm grateful for now, but actually, I just have more of a clear mind. I just feel more focused, more motivated. We get the dopamine hit from going on those things, but then actually it's sucking our focus, our mental energy, and then we go back and try and focus on something else. And so I found that I just feel like I'm a little bit more on purpose since deleting that one app off of my phone. And then I realized I went on my computer, and you can see who's tracking you, all your cookies, they call it, right? So and and it's just like this list of like 200 different websites tracking what I'm exactly clicking on and moving with my cursor, every move. Um, and I was telling Shahana, like, yeah, we seem to be okay with that nowadays. And um, and I think it's a whole nother topic, but it's just like, ah, I don't even know where to go with it.
Well, you think about it, you're like a mature professional who's, we're not gonna say older, but you're not a young buck anymore. Like you're a mature person, right? And you think about it like a child or a teenager or an adolescent or someone in their early 20s trying to find themselves and figure it
Totally.
all out. And then they have this, like we're lucky we grew up without stuff, right? So we can like let go of it. But even for us, it's difficult sometimes. For us, there's some people in our age bracket that can't let go. So imagine a
No,
kid. It's
imagine a
tough.
kid.
I can't imagine it. I honestly can't. Tough.
Like even a 3, 4 year old doesn't even have a prefrontal cortex, like so you're, or it's just like the size of an element. So yeah, just the how we're bombarded with different messaging. Um, yeah, it's unfortunate and scary, and um, but I think as like you said, we're more mature now, and I think we'll all go through different stages. You just hope that everybody goes through that stage where they can start to realize that. And then every person that comes into you, like whether it's at your gym or in our office, you just try and leave them with that little extra little bit of inspiration, especially the younger kids. Um, like I'm always just the things I love to gift the most are books, I gifted you a book your last time,
You
right?
did?
So, and um, and a handwritten note. We just get bills in the mail or flyers and stuff. So, being able to step forward and be that person that is different because you're doing things different. You're spending the money that you've made and investing it in other people and giving them resources, showing that you care other than just a gift card or whatever it is. So right now at our office, we're doing this really cool 90-day goal. We're doing random acts of kindness, and we're not telling anybody
For
that we're
three
doing that. It's the
months?
first time for 3 months. Every day, everyone has to do two random acts of kindness, and um, every time you do it, you write on a sticky note and you put it on the back kitchen wall. You don't put it in front of the office for everybody to see. You put it on the kitchen wall. So right now, I think we're over 200 sticky notes. Our goal is 520. I don't know if we'll get there by the end of the year, but we've got 14 members. And so you can see everyone's got their own color sticky note, and the whole wall is filling up now. Um, and so just remind, like doing the little things in life, and we do it already, but being very intentional. We talk about it's not about good intentions, it's about intentional living. So actually living with actions. Um, just the other day, I saw this lady fall down, the senior, she hit her head, she's bleeding. Of course, there's already lots of people that are there around her helping her, but I just stayed a little bit longer. One lady helped her up, and for whatever reason, everyone else left because she thought that this lady was cared for. I was like, let me just stay a little bit longer. And it turns out it was the lady that was helping her up, plus me that was there, helping getting her to first aid. So it was just one of those moments where I was like, looks like everything's under control, but hey, I'll just stay a little bit longer. And I'm like, wow, that was my random act of kindness, was just helping that lady going the extra distance. Um, and so that's something that we're doing right now. We'll see how it goes. And
That's
personally,
great
it
progress.
worked out well. Yeah, it's a mindset shift.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to have that, and you're big on having the right culture and the right team and the right values and all that stuff. And it's inspiring to see for us as well to have that
Mm,
conversation on the business side. Is like, okay, what is Khaled doing? Because I know you're always thinking of improving and tweaking things and doing things in a more customer oriented way, client oriented way. So it's good to see that.
mm.
Aligns very well
Thanks,
with
man.
person that you are, because I know I'll tell you guys it's very genuine. Khaled's a very kind, giving person, and I'm not surprised that he's doing something like this with the initiative at his clinic.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. And not to do like a back and forth thing, but every time I went to your guys' gym, people knew who I was, but they're so friendly and joking around. And it's like when you're the leader of a place. I mean, you don't need a title to be a leader, obviously, but when you're a leader, is that who you select and bring on your team is a direct reflection of yourself and your values. And then, and especially in the workplace, 40% of our life at work, and then nurturing those people, but making sure that we have the conversations, the hard conversations with people to make sure that they're still the right fit and that we're growing them. And if they're not the right fit, then somewhere else might be, is what I've had a hard lesson in learning over the last 1 year. But I'm grateful to have the team that we have right now. So I know we're getting up to time. This has been so cool. Like I just
Yeah,
love this casual conversation. Um, and I think like personally, I'm getting a lot out of it just from talking to you,
of
just
course.
for my own benefit. And yeah, what do
No,
you got to say?
I'd love to do it again, and I think this is a good scenario for us because it's more like you were saying, casual, and it's not I'd say almost not as robotic as like a formal podcast interview, which is nothing wrong with that. We can do that maybe another time too. But this is definitely something different that I enjoyed. So hopefully we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. Okay, buddy.
Thanks,
I
Khaled.
guess we'll meet on the soccer field with the kids,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, let's do it. Oh, yeah, we'll
we'll
see each
talk to you
other.
soon.
All right. You have a good day.
Okay.
All right.
See ya.